Okay, so we're rolling.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming. I'd like to first off acknowledge that the Embassy Cultural House is in London, Ontario, on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, Ottawa-Danrun, and the Huron-Wendat peoples at the forks of the Deshkan-Zipi River, also known as the Antler River, which is an area subject to the dish with one spoon wampum and other treaties. Yeah, I guess as settlers and as unsettlers, we're able to live on this land because the Canadian state that we participate in and are complicit in is based on ongoing horror and genocide. This isn't history, this is ongoing. And I think on the minds of a lot of us this week was the finding of the 250 children that were buried in Kamloops, which is not too far from where I am. And it's really, yeah, everyone's really emotional, but I hope, and it's hitting everyone really hard, but I hope this is what we can look for here is we can seek justice for these, it's our responsibility to seek justice for these kids, right? So one thing that people out here, I'm on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, and something that a lot of people are doing out here is wearing orange. And so the story behind this is that there was a residential school survivor shared this story from when she was 6, where her grandma sent her to her first day of school with a bright orange shiny shirt that was immediately stripped from her. And in telling her story, she said she wants her shirt back. So so they're asking folks to wear orange as a gesture to help support residential school survivors. So today our team decided that we wanted to wear orange as well. So yeah, that's the foundation of all the work that we do on this land. So let's not forget that. So yeah, a bit about Embassy Cultural House. Olivia and Jamli were talking about it a bit, but it was founded by artists Jamli Hassan and Ron Benner and the jazz musician Eric Stack. And from 1983 and 1990, it was located in the restaurant section of the Embassy Hotel, which was on Dundas Street in East London. But last year, during all the COVID-19 stuff, ECH was re-envisioned as a virtual artist-run space and website. So since then, they were talking about a bunch of the projects that have happened, but yeah, there's been projects that have been organized with links to Mexico and Palestine, as well as Hong Kong. You all can jump in and let me know if I'm missing anything. There's programming that has included events to mark Earth Day, Women's Day, Asian Heritage Month, the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder at the hands of police. And there's also been many events and programming organized to celebrate people associated with ECH and with London, Ontario. But that's just some of what's been going on. It's a very busy, it's just like a hub of activity. And sleepwalking is one of these branches. So Embassy Cultural House is pleased to present Sleepwalking, which is a series of screenings, talks, readings, exhibits, open calls, and events in solidarity with the people of Hong Kong who are fighting the 2019 extradition bill. So in China and Hong Kong, political issues are often, they need to be spoken about indirectly or in metaphor. So to say, I'm going sleepwalking or dreaming, we learned that this is a metaphor for saying that you're going to protest. So we launched this in February, this last February on the Lunar New Year, and hope to highlight ongoing events in Hong Kong and connect them with artists' experiences and issues from our own communities as a means to build transnational solidarity. We had one event so far, which was a conversation with Jevin Zhao, who was one of the directors of 10 Years, which was a wildly popular film from 2015 that imagines Hong Kong 10 years into the future. Yeah, I think a lot of people from Hong Kong saw that one. And he was in conversation with Emile Dirks, who was a PhD candidate at the U of T, whose research focuses on how carceral practices of the Chinese state affect specific and minority communities in China. So I'll let Alistair and Yamguan describe their works. We'll get into that in a bit, but I just wanted to mention that this second event takes place on the 32nd anniversary. The second event of Sleepwalking takes place on the 32nd anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. So we want to remember the students and demonstrators who lost their lives on June 4th, 1989. And so if you go to the Empty Square event page, and I think maybe Olivia, you could drop the link in. In addition to, we're going to put links to the artworks on there, but we also put reflections and memories and artworks around June 4th that were shared in solidarity by people in the Embassy Cultural House community. So that includes Yamguan, Jeff Thomas, Lauren Klassen, Henry Sang, Andy Patton, and Jamali. So they all shared something to give, just shared a reflection to kind of continue the memory of that event. And we also, like in Hong Kong, every year, what they do is they take a bunch of candles and take them to Victoria Park to have a vigil. And this year, that action is banned, and people are lighting candles in their windows and stuff. Or there's just candles being handed out as like a symbol or like a suggestion to an action. So after this event, we invite you to light a candle in your window, or Yamguan has invited people to stage one-person protest in their neighborhood. Or you can also just think about developing your own action or ritual to commemorate the tragic events of June 4th. So on that note, one of the curators of this project is Brian, who's actually in Hong Kong. And last time he just turned his camera off. But this time you can see Brian's the one with the lighted candle here. And he said he would give us an update or some reflections on what's going on in Hong Kong right now. So Brian, are you there?
Hi, Stacy. Thank you very much. Just would like to check if anyone can hear my voice.
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Because tonight the network is not very stable. Just to check. Hello, everyone. Thank you, the Embassy Cultural House, for having me again to share about the morning in Hong Kong. When the massacre happened in Tiananmen Square, I was too young to understand what had happened, and my family has never talked about this. I was told when I studied Chinese history in my 9th grade. There was only 2 pages talking about the incidents in the textbook, and obviously teachers did not give out bloodshed photos and videos during the classes. But I knew that there has been an evening vigil in Victoria Park on every June 4th, every single year. Everything about the June 4th massacre was like a hearsay to me as a high school student. There were many questions in my head. Therefore, I looked up on the internet, and apart from the news cut, which I found familiar in the textbook, I saw numerous injured and bleeding people being lifted and transported on trolleys and bicycles. People were escaping from Tiananmen Square. There was an army in real military outfits and tanks and armored vehicles. But there was limited light in Tiananmen Square. And suddenly sparks flashed in darkness. Gunshots were heard. Frames filtered the video footage in orange, making the blood even red than normal. The world should have already seen this. There was one time I joined the vigil, and there were some sharing and singing songs in the Victoria Park. Nothing special, and there were a few prosperous years in Hong Kong that time. The society was stable, and there's not much to complain about. Among different political spectrum in Hong Kong, there were even debates about whether to commemorate the June 4th massacre. Why should we care about democracy and human rights when people in that country don't? Some Hong Kong pro-independence activists claimed the massacre was another country's business because Hong Kong and China are two separated countries. Why should we care? Answers to these questions were revealed last year when the government banned the vigil gathering in the name of COVID. The crowd still gathered in the Victoria Park where the vigil has been every year, and as usual, people lit candles to stand against the authoritarian government. This is to say, no matter which nationality, race, ethnicity, political orientation, and beliefs, we need to be in solidarity to fight against the deprivation of freedom of expression and to fight against totalitarianism. There was not a vigil today in Hong Kong. The police blocked the entry of playgrounds for vigil. They expelled citizens who came to offer flowers. They even blocked all traffic tunnels, claiming a regular stop and search for suspicious vehicles. If we are still leaving those deprived global citizens behind, still being cited on economic growth, and there will be one day we have to face the consequences alone. I used to ask myself, why do we light candles in the vigil? Some say it means passing on a belief. Some say it means hope. Some say lighting a candle is an universal act to commemorate. But I think flame is the only thing lights up the darkness in the midnight of Tiananmen Square on June 4th, 1989. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Brian. That was, I just want to sit with that a moment before we move on. It's so valuable to have you in Hong Kong to share your insights with what's going on there. And I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Stacy.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe yeah, maybe I'll start because Yamguan's work is sort of directly speaks to Tiananmen Square. So maybe I'll start by introducing a bit about this artist that we have with us, that we're so lucky to have with us today. Yamguan is a Hong Kong-born, Toronto-based multimedia artist. His artistic practice references and engages with Chinese culture and literary practices. Yamguan's work explores new expressions of space and time, past and present, fantasy and reality. He uses video and computer-generated animation to reimagine familiar spaces in varied dimensions and perspectives. I don't know if he remembers this, but I first met Yamguan at Attic Books in London, Ontario. I think it was Attic Books, where he organized a little exhibition in the bookstore on books that Jamli participated in, and many of his friends. And that's where I first met him. And then later on, I was writing for a art blog in Toronto at the time. And then I interviewed him about his work. He was in a group exhibition at a cow gallery on Richmond Street. And I remember he had this, I can see like this very subtle but large vinyl text piece in the gallery. That kind of like you had to move to notice that it was like a different, that it would shine in a different way than the rest of the wall. So Yamguan earned his MFA from the University of Alberta in 1997. He has exhibited his work widely, both nationally and internationally, including at the McLaren Art Center, the Agnes Etherington in Kingston, Art Museum at U of T, Darling Foundry, Yuanfen New Media Art Space in Beijing, and YYZ in Toronto. His work is collected by the Agnes Etherington, the Justina M. Barnaky, or Art Museum at U of T. I think they're the same now. I don't know. Yeah, the Musée d'Art de Joalette at the Bank of Montreal, the Royal Bank of Canada. He is represented by Christie Contemporary in Toronto. Lives and works in Toronto. Currently as associate professor in the Department of Visual Art and Art History at York. And then Olivia, would you like to introduce Alistair?
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Stacy, and for introducing Yam. So I'm really happy to introduce Alistair MacKinnon, who's an emerging artist based in London, UK. So we've got both London, we got a lot of London representation here, London, Ontario, and the very cool London, UK. I was really lucky to meet Alistair during my MA in Fine Art. We both were in the same program at Chelsea College of Art and Design. And I was really drawn to his work because I think it was sort of my first encounter with 3D work that really sort of spoke to me. And I remember during COVID, when everything had sort of gone online, that this work, Republic, that he's going to be sharing with us today, I just thought it was so striking. And I just remember seeing it on our very small school blog and really wanting it to have space to breathe somewhere. And I'm happy that this opportunity came along because I really do feel that it speaks to a lot of the important issues we are addressing today. Not specifically Tiananmen Square, but very much the spirit of what that represents. And a bit more formally, I'll just share his sort of work and accomplishments. So his practice involves an interdisciplinary journey through painterly digital art, biology, and virtual spaces. His works manifest as live-streamed programs, videos, animations, paintings, and sculpture. Alistair's work facilitates these topics by translating the physical into the virtual, moving paintings of his own and others, 3D scanned ancient artifacts and plants from online archives, and photographs and physical materials into 3D rendering and simulation software. Distortion is a key facet of his process, and these forms are abstracted through a growing list of open source softwares. When I met Alistair, he was still doing pastel drawings and paintings. And I remember very quickly him sort of self-learning a lot of coding and 3D softwares. And I don't know if I saw him paint again by the end of the program, but I really do think this medium suits him well.
It's been a while, but I'll return to it soon enough.
Sometime.
Yeah.
And so Alistair studied at Hampstead School of Art and went on to complete an MA in Fine Art at Chelsea College of Art and Design. And he has also exhibited at the Saatchi Gallery and participated in a late at Tate Britain. And he is currently undertaking research and preparations for a PhD in science and art. Thanks so much for being here, Alistair.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll start. I'd like to get the artists to introduce their works and take us through a little bit of what, take us through their work, basically. And maybe, does someone feel like going first? We can make this more voluntary.
I don't mind. I mean, you're saying that Yams could go first because of the direct link to
Tiananmen Square.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try that. Maybe then.
If he's happy to go first, I don't mind.
That's fine. I can go first.
Okay. So, Olivia, do you want to bring up the link? And
yeah, do you want me to bring up the video right now, Yam, or do you want to talk a little bit?
Maybe I'll give a little introduction to the work, and then the work is very short, it's only a minute and a half. So I have like 15 minutes, right, or something like that. So
yeah.
Maybe I'll talk a little bit, and then we can share the work with the audience. Yeah. I just want to thank the organizer, Stacy, Olivier, and Cultural Embassy for this, for supporting this project, because I was gonna do it anyways. It would have been clandestine. I want a lot of my political projects like that. So given this opportunity now, it has a public face. Yeah. So it's a new experience for me, a new adventure, and the work has to now adapt and address this new condition. Yeah. So thank you for this. And the work I'm sharing today is a memorial for June 4th, Tiananmen Square. It's a virtual version, a virtual kind of manifestation of the Statue of Democracy, a sculpture, a really rough and temporary sculpture that was built by the student on the square in Tiananmen Square around June 4th. And it was the symbol of all the aspirations at the time. And the sculpture was destroyed by the army finally. And so that was that. And the work actually is a confluence of a lot of my ongoing interests, right? My virtual statue. One is my ongoing interest in the idea of the virtual. For me, the virtual, it's something that is either between not yet and what is not yet to come. So it's a state of potentiality, state of potential. So that runs through a lot of my work, including digital work and non-digital work. And the second strand is my interest in memorials. A lot of my works are actually memorials. This one for sure, and in earlier work, including a memorial, a book work of German Jewish poet Porcelain, and the work on Nushu, a memorial of a kind of dead language invented by women in China, and other shorter, smaller memorial pieces of friends around me who passed away, and so on. So this is a kind of ongoing thread in my work. I think the idea of memorial has a lot to do with the virtual. It's something that has already been and not yet is in that state. Yeah. And another thing is the working with this statue. It's that where I work, York University, actually has a replica of this statue. First, it was a paper mache, and it was displayed in a very prominent place in the student center. And then later on became a bronze version, a more permanent version. But however, throughout the years, it has been displaced to less and less remarkable places. I think it's because the administration want to avoid controversy, right? They want students from China. They want them, because it's in charge of so much more. So the statue is still there, but no one knows about it, and no one knows where it is. It's very much sharing the fate of June 4th now, because less and less people will remember it. And who has the authority, who has the privilege, the responsibility to remember this event is someone like us from Hong Kong who had lived through this, right? And now that even it's not allowed in Hong Kong to publicly commemorate this event, so we have to find other ways, and other expressions, other ways of dissemination. So this is another reason that prompted me to make this sculpture in the virtual space. Yeah. Another, maybe the last strand is I recently became interested in the blockchain as a way to disseminate art. And what is odd in the blockchain is there's nothing there, almost not there. It's not nothing. There's a ledger, there's a file, but at the same time, there's almost nothing. It's also something you cannot destroy it. Even government cannot destroy it. So I think this kind of ambiguity, this paradox in the blockchain, it's an area I'd like to move the statue in. You know, what we're seeing today is one iteration. A lot of my work often go through different manifestations, iterations, and modifications. So eventually, I'd like to develop this work into something that I can put on a blockchain, and also something interactive, and also something can be distributed as a graphic, and so on and so on. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say today. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Yam. And then Olivia, did we want to, do you want to screen share the video so that people can see it just without having to click on a link? Do you think that would work?
Yeah, I'll share that with everyone right now.
And yeah, maybe we can drop the link in the chat as well, so there's options.
Everybody's, can everybody see this okay? You might just have to pin my screen, but I'll bring it up.
It's full screen for me, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'll just play this once.
There has to be sound, I think.
There's.
Could everybody hear that okay?
I don't
No,
hear
there wasn't any sound, so maybe we can just drop Bob just dropped the link in the chat. So maybe we can give folks a minute to just follow the link.
Yeah, the sound is
chat.
critical.
The sound is critical. I was very moved. I'm sorry that the I'm sorry that people weren't able to hear it.
Yeah, I wonder why it didn't come through.
Yeah. I don't know if you can share the sound. Maybe you can only share the screen. And
yeah, maybe it's just a Jitsi thing. But I would encourage everyone. It's a minute.
Yeah, let's all should we just try and watch it now?
Yeah.
If anyone has any issues with, just send me a message and I can direct you to it as well. But there's a link that Bob just dropped into the chat, and if you click it, it should take you to a Vimeo link, a Vimeo video. for Yam's work, which is very short. And we can check back in like a minute or two so that everyone has an opportunity to see the work and listen to it as well. So let's sound on. That was so powerful. Thank you. Just getting some comments. I'll just read them out. So Tarek says, great piece. Christine, powerful piece of work. Alistair says it's amazing. And Bob has a heart emoji. I've listened to this piece at least 10 times, tears every time. Have sent to friends in Paris, Hong Kong, Berlin, Taipei, and Beijing. Posted on Facebook so everyone can listen. I shared with my students today. So Ira said that was so moving, and Dan Pond said thank you, Yam.
Thank you.
So that's some of the feedback that responses that we're getting from that beautiful work.
May I add a few words?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, this statue, I made it to be like a kind of hologram. So a hologram in the virtual space. So it's kind of like a ghost of a statue. Yeah. And this idea of spirit that's kind of lingering, that you can't destroy because it's not here. Yeah. And at the same time, the title is Soul for the Dead Today. It's a quotation from Lao Xiaobo, who recently passed away. He was an activist on the Tiananmen Square. And he decided to remain in China all these years so he can keep the spirit of those died on the Tiananmen Square company. So I think, again, this idea of ghosts, this idea of a ghost statue, the ghosts of those who died on that day, yeah. And hologram idea, yeah.
Thank you so much, Yam. It's really a wonderful piece, and I'm so glad that everyone got to see it today. I mean, it's
thank you.
Yeah, that we didn't, post it ahead, and that we all sort of experienced this together. I think it really it changes the experience.
Yeah.
We have a question. I think it was from Wendy, just wondering about the Chinese characters at the end. I know 6 and 4 as the dates of the Tiananmen Square massacre, but I don't know the first 2 characters. Can you tell me what those are?
It's just do not forget.
Do not forget.
Because it's a common slogan for this memorial event. Even in Hong Kong, the virtual, they would
Okay.
have banners about this. Yeah.
Thanks. Alistair, do you feel up for sharing your work now?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah.
Okay.
But a brilliant piece of work. Yeah, I really liked it. Very
Thank you.
powerful. So I just have the piece ready here. Give me a moment.
Yeah, and if you want to talk before sharing, that's okay too. You've got time as well, so.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk a little bit about some of it. Just I suppose generally my fascination with virtual spaces sort of naturally led me to a route in which I looked at as a potential space for either protest or demonstration, but also vigils as well. And so I guess the sort of coalescence of the Black Lives Matter protests and the Hong Kong protests kind of led me down the route to create this this piece I'm going to share today, basically. So I'll get that going now. So I don't know if the audio is coming through or not, but this is the piece. And so I normally present it in silence, but I think today I've been asked to sort of talk through it, basically, essentially, because I suppose the piece of work is sort of durational. It's supposed to be presented over a longer period of time, and people can kind of. The idea was you're not necessarily supposed to sit there for the entire presentation. You can appear when you like and dip in and out when you like, essentially. And so the sort of shifting masses of people are controlled by AI, and that was kind of my first sort of endeavor into actually using sort of autonomous agents in my artwork, which I hadn't done before. And the focus was actually mainly on surveillance, particularly, and how surveillance was being sort of employed in all these situations across the world, essentially. And then the second focus was on police brutality, essentially. And I suppose my mind sort of goes back to the questions that Olivia sent over to me. And I just thought I'd kind of share my responses to those in conjunction with this work, because I think it would be relevant. And so in terms of protest, I was sort of hesitant about it for the longest time, and sort of trying to figure out where it was I stood in the sort of protest sphere. And for a long time, I doubted whether or not I could achieve anything. And then once I became aware of the nature of the action and the sort of demonstration, it became kind of more important to me as I realized, I think, especially with these sort of covert protests that don't happen in the public eye, I realized that it's more important to take the action than to remain silent, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so that led me to make two sort of works, Republic being one of them, in response to this, and look at the virtual space as an area for protest, which I think is really important nowadays, and is I think we've only just begun to see the wave of protest that's going to be sweeping different areas for different reasons, and I think it's really important. So. And in terms of vigils, I guess a lot of my recent work has been they've all been commemorations in a way, some of which aren't outrightly stated to be commemorations, and Republic is essentially a commemoration in itself, in which I sort of look at the different surveillance cultures that are employed by political systems, whether democratic or non-democratic, or even systems that claim to be democratic. And I suppose the importance of vigils for me is sort of an acceptance of the emotional toll and thoughts that I have towards violence and subjugation that kind of sits in my peripherals. So for me, it was important to actually step forward and accept these feelings towards what's actually going on. And as an artist, the best way to do that is through your actual work and action. And I think that leads me to the last point in terms of vigils and commemoration is I kind of wanted to cement these things in my mind in a similar way to this sort of remembrance of specific dates, history. And part of that that desire to cement things has led me directly here to speaking right now.
Sorry, Alistair, your mic cut out just for a minute.
I don't know what happened. It looked like everybody got muted suddenly, but I think I'm back now.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know where I cut out.
You cemented something.
Okay, so to put it simply, it's about cementing ideas and action as opposed to commentary, I suppose. And I guess there was sort of a change in which I decided I wanted to manifest action from art instead. Not that all art is static, but I felt that my art wasn't directly engaging with certain issues, and I should sort of do that unapologetically, I think. So then I'll take this moment just to thank you guys for allowing me to be here and talk about my work in this sort of context. And I suppose the other thing I would touch on is essentially the idea of systems. And so my work sort of observes different systems, whether they're technological, biological, or political. And what I realized recently is that all of these things are ethical systems, and we apply ethics to these systems, but we should they should exist in tandem. And so I've sort of been thinking an awful lot about the regulation of information and its passage between a public space and a governmental space, regardless of what country or political system that is. And so it's given me a lot of food for thought, because the initial idea behind this project I'm showing right now is to be an ongoing project. It's not in its final state, and I don't think it ever will be. It will be continuously built upon and developed to reflect growing changes, or even changes as they directly happen through linkage to the internet, for example. And yeah, I hope to grow projects like this in solidarity with other issues that I essentially believe are sort of facing the same threat, essentially. Just change the camera feeds again. And yeah, I think that's all I'd have to say on the matter without overstaying my welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And thanks for sharing all those spaces in your work. There's It's amazing how many cameras there are.
There are, I think, 8, I believe, so far.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And we have a really lovely response from Bob. I would encourage everyone to read that in the chat.
Oh, ghost stories, yeah. Yeah.
Should we read that, Stacy?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so
I just feel so creeped out now because like now I'm so aware of all of the cameras that are pointing at us.
Yeah. That little green light on my laptop is a lot more ominous now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll share with everyone Bob's really nice reflection. So he just said, combining Yam and Alistair's work and Brian's Singing Candles, a beautiful attendance and awareness. Both works remind me of the Chinese character. I don't know how to say that. But ghost story, he mentions. Both
ghost stories,
yeah, both are infected by ghosts. Memorial, luminous beings. The importance of the dead and spirits is incredibly important in Chinese theology and culture. And there is this, as David Foster Wallace wrote, every love story is a ghost story. Thank you for this beautiful presentation. And I would like to extend that and just say thank you, Yam and Alistair.
Thank you.
Both
thank
of
you,
you,
Bob.
Thank you.
Yeah, both of you have brought something very important to the table, and yeah, I'll let Stacy carry on. I'm not the MC.
Oh yeah, I guess I do want to give folks an opportunity to ask questions, and I have questions too. But yeah, maybe just an appreciation of the work and time that Alistair and Yamguan have shared with us. We could turn on our cameras and microphones for a sec and just like do a big applause or a wave. If I can invite you to do that, I would love if we could all just be like, give them a round of applause.